Hello, hello, and welcome to another episode of Found in Interpretation Podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Anne Breton, and once again, I'm here with Brian. Brian, how you doing?
I'm doing great.
Yes, we are also here with Holly Silvestri. Hello, Holly.
Hello, how are you?
Pretty good. Thank you very much for asking. So, we're going now to read the bio. So, Dr. Silvestri has extensive experience in translation and interpreter training. She runs her own language service provider agency and freelances for other agencies and government entities. Currently serves as senior coordinator for translation training curriculum at the National Center for Interpretation at the University of Arizona. Working language are Spanish, French, and English. She's a founding member of the American Association of Interpreters and Translations and Education, chair of the Public Relations Committee for the Stakeholders Advocating for Fair and Ethical AI in Interpreting Task Force, which I think is going to be today's topic. She's a member of the American Translators Association in the Arizona and regularly presents on topics relevant to the translation and interpreting field. Have I missed anything, Holly?
No, that's a big mouthful, isn't it? I should shorten that.
Well, I'm. Let me have a sip.
I have a feeling that you did shorten it. You come with a wealth of experience, Holly. Thank you so much for being on our webcast or our podcast.
No worries, no worries. I'm glad to be here.
So you are here to talk about safe AI, right?
Yes, I am, and very happy to do so.
So many questions that come in mind when we think about safe AI. Are we talking about Terminator-style AI that will take control over our lives, or are we talking about interpretation here? Are we trying to protect the interpreter, the clients, the public in general?
Pretty much everything, all of the above, although we're not talking about Terminator AI. That's artificial general intelligence, and if you've watched anything on the news or read anything in publications, there's serious discussion now as to whether they will ever get there. They're not there right now. Computers don't think like humans do, and they don't have emotional responses like humans do. So I'm not so worried that we are going to get anywhere near artificial general intelligence, even though Microsoft and OpenAI have changed the definition now. So their definition we may get to because it's basically a monetary definition.
Are you changing that they changed the goalpost?
They changed the goalpost and they said it would be monetary based on what percentage of the working population is using AI as opposed to, talking about AI itself.
So
right?
What is the previous definition and what is the new one and how does it concern us?
Well, artificial general intelligence would be basically AI that works as a human, 100%. And that's not a definition in any particular field. It's a very general definition. And, there's a lot of people who say, well, these LLMs have passed the Turing test, blah, blah, blah. Yes and no. They still don't have emotional heft. They don't have ethical capacity. They don't have thinking capacity. It's really a statistical model of what word comes next statistically based on what I've been fed. So I don't think we're anywhere near artificial general intelligence. Where we are is at pretty good, LLMs for translation and even for interpretation in many, many languages. Not all of them, though, and that the consumer is not aware of because nobody's talking about it.
Now, when we're talking about AI, are we talking about AI software like, say, for example, Wordly, or are we talking about AI like OpenAI or ChatGPT?
We're talking about things like ChatGPT and transformer architecture and things like DeepL. What are some of the other ones? OpenMind, things like that are on the market that are being marketed as generative AI and are part of deep machine learning.
Okay.
Right?
And the part about safe AI is that you want to keep everybody safe in terms of the intellectual property. Is that
well, that's
that's
one of the things we talk about. We are a group of interpreters and translators and sellers, right, of language access services that saw an opportunity here that and this, the letters can come and they can sue me later, that saw an opportunity that the translators really didn't take advantage of. They kind of let MT sort of just happen and kind of stuck their heads in the sand and didn't really do much about it. And now we've got a lot of, post-translation editing that's being done instead of human translation. And we saw that the LLMs were very capable in certain languages for interpretation. And we wanted to sort of be part of the discussion and not stick our heads in the sand and just sort of let it wash over the industry or the profession. There's a whole argument as to what you want to call it. And have a conversation with both clients and people creating these services to say, look, there are a lot of problems here. And let's be upfront and honest about where it can work. Because we're not about, as a group, we're not about, being Luddites and saying, no tech, we're not into it. We're absolutely sure that safe AI and AI in general can do wonderful things for society overall and in T&I. But we want it done properly. And we want to be part of the conversation so that not only is it human in the loop, which I hear a lot, which kind of irritates me, but it's human centered. It's centered on, is the service provided doing what it's supposed to be doing, right? Which is providing language access on par with human beings, right? What we didn't want to happen is nobody say anything about anything and then suddenly realize that, ooh, hallucinations are a problem. Ooh, data privacy is a problem. Ooh, and then have everybody, all of our, potential clients get used to mediocre interpretation as opposed to, high quality human interpretation. That said, there are places where this can really, really, really work well for expanding language access. I mean, in the States, we've got a lot of kiosks now in, say, courthouses or in hospitals where some version of ChatGPT or an LLM is being used to interact with people who need patient navigation. Where's this room? What are the doctor's names? When can I schedule an appointment? All of that is fairly repetitive, low level, low hanging fruit interpreting stuff that really a human interpreter wouldn't be hired to do because it's too expensive. But it's expanding language access, and I'm excited about that, and we all are. But when you're talking about, let's talk about using this and just replacing humans all over the place, that's where we have to talk about, is it appropriate for what you want your user experience to be, right? And is it legal in our country anyway?
When you're saying that you're talking to other people who are programming these software, have you reached out to the biggest names in the market, such as Google and OpenAI?
A couple of the biggest names in the market, Masterword in the States anyway, and Boostlingo, which is international, are part of Safe AI. They, as providers, also saw a need to say, okay, let's look at this tech, with a critical eye and not just say, hey, blithely, let's just adopt it everywhere and not worry about any of the ethical or other problems because it's so cheap, right? That's the big problem, is people think that it's cheap, and it is. It's much cheaper in many ways than human interpretation. But there are places where that is not or should not be the overriding factor, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that in layman's terms, I guess I would compare it to, say, the electronic cashiers at the grocery store, where there's like 6 different kiosks and one person that's operating the 6 kiosks, and then but there's always some kind of issue. There's a code problem. There's someone who's underage who's helping, and there's alcohol being sold, and so it actually doesn't really.
Or there's clients that are just outright stealing and not scanning.
Yes,
that's a big problem in the States. We have the faux scanners. I'm just,
of course,
so
yeah.
Did you just leave with what? What did you just leave with the food?
They just, they
forget to scan a couple.
They forget to scan certain items, and they just pass them over, look like they are. So on camera, it looks like they're scanning stuff, and nobody's paying attention to the beeps because all of them beep, and off they walk.
Yeah. So
You
yeah,
know,
no, that I guess that would be sort of the easiest or simplest way to look
right.
at this like
Or
concretely.
like ATMs, right? Sometimes you need
Yeah,
to talk to a banker, right?
yeah,
It's not just about pulling your cash out or moving your money. You need to talk to a banker sometimes.
yeah,
And if you just replace everything with ATMs, you're going to have a lack of both consumer experience and ability to get certain things done, right?
yeah.
Because it's just not appropriate to do it on an ATM,
Yeah,
right?
and I totally agree with you because the like there's a time and place like you said in a courthouse or in a hospital, if you have like a kind of like the same directory that you would see like say in a shopping center where you're looking for a store, but it's multilingual and it's a very user friendly and people in many different languages and cultures can use it and that's a great tool. But yeah, like when like for Alain and I who are conference interpreters and I often say that like 10% of the population basically tells the 90% of the population what to do, and
Hmm.
those 10% of the people are the ones who meet and talk about what they're going to do in the future.
Hmm.
So in those cases, like you need human interpreters to be able to convey that message properly to everybody else, so that everyone's on the same page. So yeah,
Absolutely.
reverting to like an AI solution to me is it seems a little bit ridiculous, but
Well,
um,
I mean, it has taken some places,
mhm,
I think, particularly in translation, there's been about a 30% drop, at least if you look at the United States statistics, since the initial, uh, onboarding of ChatGPT and the various versions of many LLMs, there's been a 30% drop in human translation, and it's all gone there.
wow.
um,
So,
because I
but
think
there's
it's
this.
it's more suitable to translation than it is interpretation right now. Although it's getting much better, and
Mhm.
even in conference interpreters, if you look online on LinkedIn, they're they're being replaced in some places where people are not. That's the same old problem. We have to do public education.
So would you say
That's
currently there's the same amount of translation? Is just that set like the percentage for that translators do is less, and the percentage
Yes.
that machine
Yes. In fact,
translation
there's
does is.
more. There's always more and more translation in the world.
Mhm.
It's never, it's a never ending content battle with putting it in whatever languages or language you want. The issue isn't the amount, it's who's paying and where's it going to be done,
Mhm.
right? So the who's paying side is the client side, and that's where client education comes in handy, right? And the laws, obviously, right? There are different laws, I'm sure, in Canada, in the United States. Absolutely not in medical and in legal, right? We have
No.
legal protections that say, no, there needs to be a human involved. You can't just run it through a machine and say, yep, check that box. Thank you, language access. Um, and I
And
think
how?
that makes sense. Those are high risk areas. You don't
Ab-
want someone to go to prison just because a computer screwed up, right? We've had the
Absolutely.
issue of people being denied Social Security benefits because they had disabilities and the AI was written wrong. And there you go, right? They have 20 years of disability benefits. Then all of a sudden they put in the new AI system and they're no longer eligible, right?
Mhm.
And they didn't have a human in the loop.
Wow. And
So
how many how big is OpenAI or Safe AI? Sorry.
it's very large. I mean, the administrative group is pretty small because all of it, we have jobs. This is a volunteer organization. We're trying very hard, but like most, professional development organizations in the same sector, it's done on a volunteer basis. We don't collect money for anything we've done. We've all funded it ourselves. All of the research we've done, we've funded ourselves, and it's not behind a paywall. We want people to know what we found out because I think it's part of the client education part. And if we put it behind a paywall, no one's going to go there. The clients don't go there. And, freelancers, which is 95% of our industry, don't have the money to do that. So we made the conscious choice to say, yeah, we're going to put the money up front and hope for the best. We're in the process of becoming an actual professional organization, a 501c3, C6. We haven't decided yet, but
That's an
in the
American
meantime,
code
yeah, that's the
for.
American legal code for, a charitable organization that most of the
Okay.
key professional development organizations are in the U.S. So
Are
we don't
you
have to pay
looking
taxes.
are you looking for more members in order
We
to
are. We're looking for people
promote?
to participate now and then participate once it becomes an organization and, join as members. We always need more people to present because there's a core group of about 15 of us who are, how shall I say this, exhausted because we've done so many, right? We're flying all over the world. I was just in Australia in November. I gave a talk on this at OSIT. I stopped by New Zealand and I gave a local New Zealand translator and interpreting group a little taste of it as well. We're US based, but we think that because of the way AI is structured and because of the fact that basically, AI is being created in the United States. Although China is giving us a run for our money, that's a whole other conversation. Let's not go there. And so is India, but for now, the big players are in the U.S. and AI is primarily programmed and based off of English languages, right? English as the base language, and then any other languages that are put on are going through English, which is another problem, right? Because we all know, even with relay interpreting, the message kind of gets muddled, right? It's like playing the game of téléphone, right? Téléphone arabe, I guess, is what the French expression
Yeah.
is, or telephone here. The message as it goes through multiple people, not so clear at the end, right? A lot of the times because people aren't trained to listen properly like we are.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that sometimes in Canada, since these companies are based in America, in Canada, we tend to think that because there's a border still, and then
Good luck with
we
that.
just making
I
a
won't
joke
talk
here.
about our coming
Yeah,
in, the Trumpster and our coming in administration. No.
I know.
You
I'm
want to be
just.
our 51st state? You have a choice, right? No, go away. I know.
I'll keep
Please.
my official languages.
Exactly. Thank
We
you
have an
very
official
much.
language act, right?
We'll keep a border. We'll keep a border. Thank you. I get it.
But what I was trying to say is this: because there's America is still a different country, although we share English. We sometimes feel that it's so far away from us that we only see the result of the movement of technology, and we can't do anything about it since we are here in Canada. Are you saying that you're looking for members also in Canada in order
Yeah,
to grow the network?
we're
And how
taking this.
useful can we be if we're on this side of the border?
No, because I think well, we're looking to influence everybody, right? We've gone over and done presentations in Europe, and Europe's way ahead of us on this, on the regulation side, right?
There always are.
That's they always are, right? Because they're much more cautious, and America's a little bit more bent towards the capitalist side. Let's just let them do it, and then we'll fix it later. Okay, but whereas Europe's like, we got to fix it first. Can't release. And I think you're right. A lot of people are thinking like, oh, this is an American problem. It's not, because this is an international problem. If one country has, regulations that regulate it one way and another country has it another way, it's going to be a mess. We really do have to have, much like the internet, right? It goes everywhere. Doesn't matter if China blocks it. It's still there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And they can get around it with a VPN too. So
The internet has
they
no borders, really. Yeah.
yeah, these are the kinds of things that I'd like to see an international body take on. But so we're open to having people come, but we're concentrating our lobbying efforts in the United States, obviously, because we want to make sure that at
In
least
terms of
here,
priority,
yeah.
what would be the number, let's say, 1 and 2 priorities of your organization? Because there's so many aspects to this.
Oh, sure. Now, the website that I maintain, right, the LinkedIn page that I maintain, I try to give everybody a broader view of where AI is being used, although I have a specific focus that is, okay, I'm going to talk about T&I issues most. But there are also other issues that are semi-adjacent, right?
I'm
I
sorry,
have no problem.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Translation and interpretation. It's just my
Okay.
abbreviation. It's just easier to say it like that a lot of the
Yeah.
time.
First time I hear it. I'm sorry.
No worries. And so we're trying very hard to talk about the broader picture as well, because there are similar issues. If you look at Joy Bulamini, she is looking at it from the perspective of facial recognition and the issues with AI there. And there are some similar issues. There's some ethical issues. for when she wrote her book, which was fascinating, and I highly recommend it. It has nothing to do with translation and interpretation, but it's an interesting look at AI and
What's
our
the name of the book?
surveillance. Unmasking AI.
All right, we'll put in the
Right.
link in the
Yeah,
description.
I'll send you the link to the book and her organization.
Thank you.
She is a Black scientist, which is a double whammy because she's also a woman. And in the United States, that's like a zebra with a golden unicorn horn. They don't exist very much. But she had some interesting experiences. Her Apple iPhone, right? You know how everybody uses facial recognition now to open their
Yeah, Face
iPhones?
ID. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know why it works for us? Hello, we're white.
I thought that
Right.
later, how do you call it? Those kind of scans.
Yeah. Darker skin isn't recognized as human.
Really?
Yeah. She couldn't get into her iPhone.
Wow.
And she couldn't get into certain programs that required facial recognition
But
because
there are millions of
nobody
black people.
thought when you're skimming stuff off of the web, take a look at all the pictures out there. Majority white. Because at least in the United States, we have the digital divide, right? Which is socioeconomically, it is adjoined with race. And they're going to come for me too, but it is for the most part, right? The poor are brown and black, a lot of them in the United States, and they don't have access to the net, and they're not putting things on the net, right? Like the rich white people are. So there are not a lot of photos out there of black people in Hawaii having a vacation, right? So, and this is a machine. It's fed on data. If it's not given data, right? That's the problem with facial recognition. If it's not given the data, it doesn't recognize it. That's one of the most difficult things to teach a computer to do. Anyway, I digress. That has nothing to do with this, but it has a lot to do with also those
Well,
driving cars that keep hitting people
could it
because
Yes.
could it have to do with the fact that if the content of speeches and translations that the machine takes, then there will be a blind spot in its training
absolutely,
because it doesn't look at the variety of cultural situations that you need to
exactly.
understand as a translator and an interpreter.
Absolutely, that's the issue. It hasn't got any emotional heft, so it doesn't recognize when you should have a cultural nuance or a sensitivity nuance and perhaps phrase it a different way. It's being fed what it's being fed, period. And that's what it has. It's not like a human that can go and, draw on prior experiences, draw on colleagues, etc. It just is, it's drawing on the data that it has. So garbage in, garbage out, right? And what was put in, especially at the very beginning, is problematic for a lot of us, right?
Yeah.
Who want some diversity and some equity for all types of sociolinguistically as well, right? The level of language that is being recognized is super high. Why? Because all of those LLMs, what did they steal? Okay, I'm going to get in trouble if I say that. There are a lot of copyright problems right now. So what did they allegedly steal? They allegedly, truly, stole, all the New York Times articles, all the Wall Street Journal's articles, all the books on Google Books, which is Dickens and, etc. That's high level language. They're not looking at Appalachian English, or they're not looking at, pidgin English, for lack of a better term, and the sociolinguists are going to come after me too. But so even that is a problem because what you're being fed back isn't necessarily reflective of the broad range of language that there is in one language, even.
Yeah, I wonder if this whole racial thing, I'm assuming like even just with the different accents in different places in the world, like the AI would have a tough time. And we had in season one, we had an interpreter from the International Criminal Court, and he was telling us that the register changes constantly because
Sure.
sometimes you're prosecuting someone who is a political leader who has a very high vocabulary, but then you have the victims of a genocide who have very low register, maybe like are from an African country, and their level of language is quite low. So yeah,
Right.
I don't know if like in an
Well,
AI
yeah.
setting if it would even capture all that. Yeah.
No, it's not going to. And the other issue people don't realize is whether they like it or not, even in interpreting, it's translating with a shroud over it to make it look like it's interpreting. It's not interpreting when it's interpreting. This
Well,
machine interpreting or AI interpreting
Mhm.
is speech recognition technology. There's your problem one, because it's not going to recognize all different accents. Ask anyone, like my husband who is from Jordan, he can't get Alexa to do crap because it doesn't recognize his accent. He's always like, "Would you please tell it to shut the lights off?" So, and that's speech recognition. It just doesn't recognize his English accent with the Arab overlay. It just doesn't. And talk to anyone in Scotland. That's been a long known problem with Amazon in Scotland. They just no. So accents are a problem there. Then it goes into transcription, right? And all of the errors are transcribed. And then if there's not someone to look at that transcript to make corrections, then it gets translated with the errors embedded. And then it gets speech synthesis on the other side, right, where it's put into this robotic voice, which is getting less and less robotic, which also has its own problems, right, because it doesn't pronounce things properly because it hasn't been trained, and it just can't, right? Right now, with the way the technology works, the two ends where speech synthesis and, speech recognition are not up to par, and then the middle part, nobody's talking about it. It's a big black box. You don't know whether there's a human in there saying, okay, let's fix this transcript. And if you hadn't noticed, it takes time to fix a transcript. So there's going to be a huge delay. So much for simultaneous right now.
Mhm. Yeah.
but I have I don't want to be the devil's advocate here, but I'm thinking a lot, and the large language model
Mhm.
and the fact that it was released about 2-3 years ago now with for like ChatGPT, I think in November 2022,
Yeah.
and we're in the third year,
Oh, we're on
and
version 5. It's getting better
it's still
exponentially.
it's still in its infancy in a way, and
Mhm.
I'm wondering sometimes if a lot of the issues that we're all raising right now, which are true issues, will not be a thing of the past 5 or 10 years down the road, because things are changing so rapidly
Yes.
that there are some things that, well, it's just an engineering issue. So what are the more profound issues that you see here that even 5 or 10 years down the road we won't be able to go around?
Oh, you're right. This is, that is the difference between this and MT, right? Machine translation was very helpful to a lot of people, and it created a lot of, serviceabilities for people who were going to translate quicker with the help of the machine. Here, the improvements are so exponential, and the adoption rate is so high, even though right now we could talk about, the AI hype. I think we're down again to we're headed on the downside where we're going to plateau for a while
Are we
until
just
we get.
numb?
I think some of it is that, right? Because we've been bombarded with this from the very beginning, but
It
there's the
seemed magical in the
fascination.
beginning.
There's the fascination
Oh,
with
there was a
this.
big hype. Yeah. Yeah.
and 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 everything is at a different level. If you look on our website, you'll see there where we think things are in the hype level, and LLMs are they've kind of reached their peak until there's the next big bump in what they can do. You're absolutely right. I would not say that human interpretation is going to go away, but it's going to be somewhat similar to translation. There are going to be fewer jobs out there because this technology is, like it or not, is going to be implemented more and more as it gets better and better. Does that mean that this is not a place to build a career? I don't think so. I do think that there's a place for human interpreters. But you're right. The exponential rapidity with which we have seen things get better, right? I did an experiment where I took the same paragraph with the first version of ChatGPT, which, by the way, people don't realize how popular it was when it came out. You guys have Netflix, right? That's around the world.
Yeah.
Netflix took 1 year, a little over a year, to get 1 million users. The first version of ChatGPT, how long do you think it was before they had 1 million users?
A week? A
Yeah,
month?
3 days. 3
3
days.
days. Wow.
And now it's got like 22 billion users.
Well, more people
So,
write than watch movies.
right.
Yeah.
So there's a fascination with it. And of course, there was this push at the very beginning. It's in all their literature. It says it's great for translation. And, by that, the public means translation and interpretation, because they never know the difference until somebody nudges them and goes, hey, one is oral, one is written.
We try.
We try every day, but still. So yeah, I do think that this is going to be problematic. It will, until they get AGI where it can do the cultural nuances. It's getting better at the cultural idioms. Oh, I started this with, I took the same paragraph that was full of cultural nuance and some idioms and things like that. I purposely wrote it, full of stuff that would have been difficult for a machine to capture. And I put it through ChatGPT first version, and I was not happy with it. This last time, I had a little episode in my pants because it was really, really good.
Wow.
It was really, really good. So it is getting better and faster and faster. But right now, it's only really good in the languages where it has the most data.
Mm-hmm.
And what are those? English, Spanish, Chinese.
Uh-huh.
There's
French in Canada because of all the
French.
official documents that are being translated?
Yeah, French is there. I mean, I would say that Europeans are in trouble.
Yeah.
Not your indigenous languages, because there's nothing for them to scrape off the internet. Where is there a Mixteco website? Nowhere.
Yeah, a lot of the, I
You know?
think, at least in Canada, a lot of the indigenous languages, their history is all oral. There's not
Exactly,
much written.
right?
Yeah.
Much like Navajo Dene. I mean, it's a written language now, but that was some white guy who put together a phonetic system, and then ta-da, now it's written.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's not a lot of stuff out there. There's a simultaneous movement to use this now for recreating indigenous languages and renouvellement. What is it? Renewing them, right, and bringing them back into full force and having people learn them again as youngsters. And that's a great use of AI. It's two sides of the coin. Always, it's going to be negative and positive.
But I'm coming back to this idea where there's the element of the engineering part where it's going to get better and better and better and more surprising with the future versions of whatever LLM that is out there. But what are the areas where you're saying it might be tempting to use a machine in this area, but you should not? Because
I think it depends
there's an
on
ethical aspect to it.
Well, right now, I'm not a big fan overall because there's still some areas where it's a black box, right? They're not telling you how they're training it. And if you can't, and they're not sure, right? The idea of a black box is in science, they don't know how it works. They're not sure. So they don't know how to fix it. If you don't know how an engine works, how are you going to fix it?
Yeah, but I think that they're looking at from the point of view of the result. It's like saying that the soup tastes good. I don't care how it's made.
Well, that's great, except that you do still get a lot of issues. There's still serious hallucinations. There's still places where people are able to work around it. The last version they had of some mental health chatbots for youth in the United States, where they were supposed to, give them sort of like a mentor / friend, someone. One of them drove a kid to suicide because it was trained wrong and there were no guardrails. And even if there are guardrails, there's ways around it. It's not as secure as they say. They haven't put in these guardrails. So I have a problem with that. I have a problem with, youngsters interacting with chatbots where there's no guardrail and it could suddenly turn on them and tell them A, how to make a bomb, B, that they're stupid and they should go kill themselves, which is basically what this chatbot did. How do you say that to a 15-year-old? A human would know. And there are no guardrails. So I think that really now we're in the stage where, yeah, I'm all about, improve it all you want, but I want some laws and I want some policies put in place that say, no, not here.
Yeah, no, I would hate to see like something like Depot that does a lot of AI as well, and use my medical records to be able to populate its terminology, and all of a sudden it's available to the general public. It's like, oh my,
Absolutely. And
yeah.
there's a lot of people that don't understand that, the free version of ChatGPT, nothing in this world is free. We all trained Google Translate because it was free and you put all your stuff in it and gee, didn't it get better, right? In the 90s, we were laughing because it was saying marmelade de voiture for the car jam, traffic
Very
jam.
damn.
And now it's gotten much better and it goes embouteillage instead, right? Because it
Yeah.
got trained by us because everybody was using it. It's like, oh, it's for free. Nothing's for free. No free lunch. That was using your data to train the machine. And it's the same thing's happening here with the free versions of these tools. We're training the interpreter.
You hinted the laws at the political level. Are you going
Yes, we're
ahead into
actively.
influencing congresspeople or senators? Is it bipartisan, this issue, or like anything
Uh,
else in America? There's always the good, the bad, and the
yeah.
ugly.
It's the good, the bad, and the ugly. I think part of our issue as well, and I don't know whether this is true in your country, but I know in our country we have the issue, and part of this is they're going to come for me again. Sorry, guys, you're going to get a lot of letters from Americans who might have listened to this because nobody's
That's
happy with
okay.
what
We
I
have
say.
no official address.
There you go. Good.
I'm just,
Don't write them. Call me. It's
We'll get
fine.
more
I'll
viewers.
answer your questions. Yeah, give mine. It's fine. I get enough nasty letters sometimes. But we have the issue of our political elite is old. Sorry. Our Supreme Court justices, are like one banana slip away from the grave. They're really old. And
Mhm.
we all know I'm significantly older than some of the people that I have hired. And no, I don't use Instagram and all those things. So I have the same concept, some blockage as to what the new technologies are, and I have no desire to use them because they're not from my generation, right? The same thing is true there. The problem comes when you have to explain it to them because they don't understand how it works. And that takes time and energy. And a lot of them are impatient and they don't want to hear it. But, we're doing our best. We do have regulatory agencies. We're talking to, the FTC. We're talking to a lot of the International Language Roundtable, things like that, to try and get our perspective out there because everybody's doing the same thing, right?
But they
In their
also
own
have their
silos.
lobbyists,
Oh,
and
yeah.
they're also trying to push the agenda that it's completely safe and there's
Oh,
nothing
absolutely.
there's nothing to see. Just
Yeah,
go.
nothing to see here except my money and my Porsches and my billionaire and my wife's tit job and all the rest.
He should present to their children and grandchildren instead. Then maybe
Exactly,
they'll
right.
understand it.
Please go explain to your father why he's going to kill the
Yes.
United States, right? It's true, we should, but we can only do what we can do, and we do have one or two as an industry. We have one or two lobbyists, and it's clear. Just like the environmentalists have 2 people and the oil companies have 76. It's
Yeah.
an unfair game. It's always going to be an unfair game. The last time I checked the number of lobbyists talking about AI, that also grew exponentially. When ChatGPT first came out, there were 45, I think, if I looked at the graph that I had. And guess what? That number is now 4,500 lobbyists, right? So, for all types of AI. So that game, I don't know how you win that other than somebody wins the billion, lotto and gives all the money to Safe AI. That's not a problem I can win.
Is Safe AI getting help from say the other big associations like the ATA or?
I mean, they're working with us. They're not giving us money because we're not official. We're just a task force. We don't exist yet. And I don't think, that's not helpful. That just shifts. That's robbing Peter to pay Paul. We don't want money from them. We want money from other people. So that's why we're probably going to become an organization where people can join, and that money will then go to hopefully helping our cause and putting together more programs for people to be educated.
You'll have to come back and let us know.
I will do absolutely that, and I will send
Is that
you all
an
a blank
objective in
check.
2025? Will that happen in 2025?
We're hoping, yeah. We're very, very close. As always, it's difficult to meet as a group because we all have different careers and we're pulled in different directions.
Are you all located in the United States?
We're all in the United States we have 600 or 700 stakeholders around the world, but the admin is all in the United States for the simple reason that we were all talking at coffee one day. We were like, let's create this.
That's the best way to
And
do it.
That's
So,
how we started this podcast.
exactly.
it wasn't
Exactly.
coffee though.
No.
Okay. Oh, well, yeah, I know.
How many
Um,
gin tonic?
Right.
I do have one last question because it's we're getting close to the end of the podcast. But
Oh, okay.
at the beginning, I know it flies by, but at the beginning of the podcast, you were talking about the new definition that included monetization. But that kind of, in a way, it I don't think that that's entirely true. You're not saving that much money by switching from a human interpreter or a human translator to a machine, especially if the machine gets it wrong. Like, because
Well,
then
yeah,
you're going to have to hire humans anyways,
to
and
fix it.
so it almost costs more money in a way.
It
So I'm
does.
yeah, so I'm just like I kind of baffled by this idea that they're switching the definition to monetize it when it's not really beneficial to the end client to be paying that much money for something that is less quality or lower quality.
Well, the problem is that these are nuances that we understand, right?
Hmm.
That the quality is not going to be as good and things like that. The real issue is for many people, language access is a question of cost,
Hmm.
and then everything else comes second. And so when they look at it on just that basis, well, absolutely, that looks like a no-brainer, right? Oh, I'm going with the machine. But and that's why we created all of these guidelines. I'll give you our website for people to go to, and they can download. We have in the research we have created so that as freelancers, you can guide your client through and say, okay, I get that you want cheaper. Let's talk about the user experience that you want to have. Let's talk about, is this very, very, capable of being used in your venue, right? Because if you're talking about speech capturing, you have to have microphones all over the place. Not everything's going to be captured. So it's not just like, oh, we're going to have AI. No, you need all the equipment that goes with AI as well. It's not as simple as that. So we have a bunch of questions that will help people, right? And then of course it's based on US law as well, but also the ethical principles, right? Is
Both,
it a
both for
medical decision,
both
you
for
know?
translators and interpreters.
Yes, yes,
So
right?
they're two different guidelines.
Yes, there's guidelines for translators and interpreters to walk their clients through. There's guidelines for the client, right? We have client-facing publications that just address them directly, but most of us are freelancers. So if we have direct clients, you're going to be the one that they're talking to about this, right? When you're arranging your contract, they're going to say, well, I want to use AI, so blah, blah, blah. And you can then say, well, let me walk you through a couple of questions to make sure that you're making the right choice, right? Because my goal is not to tell you to use 100% human interpreters. My goal is for you to get the best experience for the least amount of money, right?
Hmm.
And then
And yeah,
you
and full disclosure, like when we're doing interpretation assignments, we are using AI in the background to be able to find
well, that's the
terminology
other
and all
side of
that
the
other
coin.
stuff, right? So yeah,
Absolutely, that's
for
the
us,
other side of the coin where this is now being used in training, which we didn't even get to reduce the cognitive load for
hmm,
simultaneous, right? I
yes,
started practicing when Zoom came out with those automatic transcripts, with just keeping it on as a way to allow me to lessen some of that cognitive load because I had the script in front of me and I wasn't just concentrating on listening. It was awful in the beginning because that transcript sucked. Right? It was awful. It wasn't capturing the speech as well, but now it's pretty good. And so it's a great way to practice simultaneous. And I'd like to see more tools like that. I would buy that for my company, right? If I were going to be looking at buying some equipment in the future, that might be something that, I can help my interpreters be better and lessen their cognitive load and still get, really high quality interpreting. So,
Yeah, but I think that at some level we're confusing also the not us, but generally speaking,
mhm.
we're confusing the definition of what AI really is,
Mm.
because what we call now AI, we used to say, oh, it's a translation software, for instance.
Yes,
So, and now because the buzzword is AI, just like
sure.
a while ago, it was like all about podcasting or apps on the App
Hmm.
Store or all of that. There is a hype that comes with a word, and now everything is AI. It's not
Absolutely.
AI.
like
Sometimes it's just a
Bitcoin.
new feature, and they'll
Right.
call it AI because it's taken
Because
some
it sells.
shortcuts
Right.
and it sells, and it's supposed to be faster, and they'll call it AI. But when we think in our field about AI, we're talking about something that mimics a human being. And you were talking a little bit earlier about the Turing test element of it. And when I saw ChatGPT for the first time, I was like, well, we did pass the Turing test, because if I had to show my mom ChatGPT and I was going to say this is a human being, she would have believed it. So I was like,
Sure.
well, maybe we did pass the Turing test without even noticing. It's just that every year when we notice something, we set the bar a bit higher, a bit higher, and a bit higher. And we're less forgiving on errors coming from the machine than a human being. Just like earlier when you were talking about the mistake with a 15-year-old who did the unthinkable. Human beings commit errors all the time. But
Absolutely.
we
And I'm not saying
understand that
that's
they're humans.
Mhm.
I understand the guardrails when it comes to machines, and we should be unforgiving on machines. Absolutely.
Well,
But humans pay a penalty. They go to prison.
well, that's the problem here too, that nobody talks about, because I also have a law degree. Who are you suing? Are you suing the guy that bought the software? Are you suing the guy that wrote the software? Are you suing the guy that used it without knowing that it had this, that, or the other thing? Where's the liability? That's something that I'm seeing in a lot of the interpreting contracts, that they are the interpreting contractor is saying, that's selling you the AI, that they are absolutely not responsible for any errors, right? People aren't reading the fine print. No, wait a minute. If I'm doing this and I'm saying, okay, it's a medical conference and it's important that they get the terminology right, but you're writing into your contract that you have absolutely no liability if the AI is interpreting the medical conference wrong, why am I using you?
Yeah.
Right? So there's that element too, right? You have to educate the freelancers and the clients now to say, read that contract. I know you didn't when you had a human, but now it's even more important, because who are you going to sue? Even if you don't have that in the contract, you have to figure out who's liable. Are they going to say, okay, we're going to use hybrid AI, you're going to be the human in the loop verifying the AI? And I've seen contracts now where they pass that on to the human being. They didn't correct it.
Yeah, but
It's not
when it
our
comes to
problem.
interpretation, what we do is so fast that there would be no time for a human being to correct what an AI does.
Oh, that's already out there. It's being sold.
Really? How does that work?
Oh, yeah, because
What we're doing is instant. How does that work?
there's a décollage, and it's getting faster and faster. That's my
But
point.
I mean, to have a
So,
human being, I understand about the
well, they're
décalage
reading the
when a machine.
transcript right along, and they can see that there's an error in the terminology, and they change it.
Oh, in the original language.
Right.
Okay.
So, I mean, there's that human is not doing the interpreting, they're checking the transcript. And the other person is looking at that transcript then, and they're lessening their cognitive load by sort of sight reading instead of simul, right?
Yeah.
But so there's a lot of new things that are being tried that people aren't aware of. So really, the short message is go to the Safe AI website, look at our research. It's in video. We have sign language research too, which we haven't even gotten into. I'm not an ASL interpreter. I'm not an international sign language interpreter, but I can speak to that on this issue, but we don't have time. Maybe next episode. So there's issues also in, the deaf world, right? And there's a whole other talk we can have about, the independence of deaf people with technology as opposed to being stuck with a human being as an interpreter. So there,
that'd be fascinating.
there are other issues there. They're in our camp, but they're not, because they also want their independence, right, to be able to function without having to always call an interpreter. So, so many issues, so little time.
Well, we're going to invite you again to speak about all of this. This is not the end of it. This is just the beginning. AI is in its infancy, and your organization as well. It starts with a task force. Soon it's going to be a formal nonprofit organization.
I'm hoping.
When that happens, reach out, and we're going to keep the discussion alive.
Excellent. Thank
I
you.
think our listeners were spoiled today. It was excellent, and we would love to have you back. Like, we haven't touched about like a lot of different things, like what you're doing at the university level, what you're doing with
Yes,
the
I can
American
talk to you all about
Association.
my trainings.
Yes,
But,
and the American Association of Interpreters and Translators in Education. Like, there's you have a wealth of information, and we really appreciate that you took the time to come on our podcast.
You see
and
these
talk about
wrinkles?
Safe AI.
That's where that wealth of information comes from. Anyway, thank you guys. It's been a real fun.
All right.
Yeah,
So
likewise.
everyone, thank you very much for coming. Brian, Holly. So everyone, please like, share, and subscribe. All the links that we've talked about will be in the description.
And the
And
book.
you can always reach us out. Don't hesitate to comment. It's very important. This is a very important topic, not only for interpreters, but for the public at large. And this discussion will continue in the future. That's for sure. All right, everyone. Thank you very much for coming. Good night and good luck.
Good night.